Welcome to the Feel Your Best Formula podcast. Are you over 40 and tired of struggling with your weight, dieting, and constantly feeling like you're starting over with nutrition and fitness? Do you wish you had more energy? Do you want to lose weight and finally keep it off for good? I'm Lil, a certified nutrition coach and former registered nurse. I too have been there, and at the age of 44, I decided I was done with fad diets and chasing a lower number on the scale. I was so tired of constantly starting over and wondering why I couldn't get lasting results. I became a nutrition coach and created the Feel Your Best formula for women who want to build muscle, lose fat, and keep it off for good. If you're ready to build a better relationship with food, the scale, and your body, let's build your formula for feeling your best. If you're new here, make sure to check the episode details for the link to my newbie starter guide. You'll receive an email straight to your inbox with everything you need to start building your Feel Your Best formula. I'm so glad you're here. Now let's dive into today's episode. Good morning. Happy Friday. This is the Feel Your Best Formula podcast. I am Lil, and today we are talking about 3 very important questions you are going to be able to ask yourself today that is going to make next week so much easier for you. As I've mentioned before, the entire purpose of habits and routines is so that you can be a best friend to yourself. You can be a mom to yourself and do things for yourself in the same way that you do for others, because I know that's what you do. I know you take care of your kids, you take care of your partner, you take care of your coworkers, and yet sometimes you just don't take care of yourself because you put all these other people ahead of you. And there is something so special about learning how focusing on yourself actually helps you be better for others. And every time you do something today for yourself that makes tomorrow easier, you are creating flow and ease in your life. And isn't that what we all want? Can you think back on times in your life? I mean, in particular, I think back on that time in our life when, before we had kids, it was just Mike and I, and we were both working. It really flowed. And when I look back on that time in my life, it's just because everything was really easy, to be honest. I mean, once you have kids and you throw all these little people into the mix of your life, then that's really when you really have to learn how to juggle your time, your energy. And I know that you think, if you don't have kids, you think that you have a lot on your plate and you think that, life is stressful, and that is true. I'm just saying the difference between before having kids and after having kids is a whole different ball game, and I will fight anyone who tries to pretend otherwise. And often, especially as women, we let our own needs fall on the back burner, and we get caught in this web of just trying to constantly take care of everyone else's needs. And one of the biggest benefits that you'll notice when you start implementing this system in your life is that it's easier to take care of yourself, and it's going to be easier for you to see what really needs to be done for those around you. And having habits and routines, again, is just being that friend to yourself. And this one, I feel, is a catalyst. Asking yourself these 3 questions every Friday is a catalyst for all your other routines and habits in your life. And I find it so much easier to deal with unplanned stressors. You can plan your life as much as you want, but ish is going to happen. We just had this happen in our life when a deer ran out and jumped literally on my son's car while he was driving. And this has just created a whole cascade of stressors in our life. Thank goodness we have great insurance. We're literally going today. We are replacing the car. He's getting a brand new car. And we were able, to have an outcome that, everything's going to be totally fine. But obviously, in the 3 or so weeks since that happened, I've had a lot of extra tasks on my plate. I've had to do this. I've had to communicate with people. I've had to mail things. I've had to fill out forms. I've had to make reports. I've had to get a police report. I've had to communicate with the garage that was trying to fix the car, then coming to the decision that, it was totaled, and all this stuff on top of an already full schedule with clients and trying to produce a podcast and taking care of a household. I mean, you get it. We get things thrown in our lap, especially at this age. I've talked about it on here before. If you have aging parents and then you still have kids you're taking care of, there is always at any moment the awareness that some curveball is going to be thrown at you. Now, the benefit of having habits and routines is that you just have these systems in place in your life where you don't have to think a lot about how you're spending your time and energy each and every day. And you're creating this flow with certain household tasks, certain things to do with your home, your family, so that when that curveball comes your way, it doesn't throw everything else in disarray. I feel like because I already had pretty good habits and routines set up in my life, it was pretty easy to add in all these little extra tasks and errands and things that I had to do to deal with, this whole car accident thing. And I know what it's like to not have systems in place. I've talked about it before on here, but I'm not someone that I would consider a naturally organized, super clean. That's just not like, I'm not a Martha Stewart. That is not, I didn't learn those habits growing up. And I'm self-taught is what I am, learning how to be organized and make sure that my life is not chaotic. I did grow up in a somewhat chaotic household where I just have so many memories of things being forgotten and being late and just not really having a whole lot of systems in place. And I think that's part of what propelled me is I didn't want to feel like that. I didn't want to be late for things. I didn't want to be forgetting things. I didn't want to arrive at the theater and realize I'd left the tickets at home. Like, I just wanted to decrease the stress in my life. And I realized that decreasing stress comes from being planned and organized. And the difference between not having systems in place and having systems in place, I'm just going to tell you that life is so much easier and enjoyable when you do create habits and routines. Some people might be like, oh, that's boring, and I don't want to live my life like that. I mean, if you're a rebel at heart, then you're not going to even think that this is something that could make your life enjoyable, because you might thrive in chaos and actually want to live that way. So this would not be a suggestion for you, because today we are talking about your Friday review and reset routine. I've talked about it on previous episodes, having a weekly reset, and it's one of the essential routines that I personally think everyone could benefit from, along with having a morning routine and an evening routine and a monthly review and reset. Or, sometimes it doesn't work out and you can't do it every month. So maybe just every quarter is just sitting down and kind of looking at the big picture. But doing it every week really just has a snowball effect in such a positive way. As I've shared, in my opinion, these 4 essential routines are just at the heart of helping you live a healthy lifestyle. You are listening to this podcast because you want to improve your health in some way. Maybe you want to lose weight, you want to eat better, you want to start working out. And those habits do not live in a vacuum. They are connected to everything else you're doing in your life. And once you realize that and you don't try to force these habits, into a day-to-day life that is not set up to help you succeed in them, once you realize that it's all connected, you can really start building habits that work for you. So again, morning routine, evening routine, this Friday routine that I'm going to talk to you about, and then doing the same thing once a month at the end of the month, or possibly just doing it every quarter, whichever works better for you. Anyway, let's go into a bit more detail on what I do on Fridays, and I'm going to give you these 3 important questions to ask yourself every Friday that's going to make going into your next week so much smoother. In all honesty, you could do this any day of the week. I know as a nurse, weekends are not necessarily, those were not my weekends. Sometimes you have to work weekends. So maybe there's something you want to do on a Sunday or a Monday, whatever day of the week you do it, whatever works for you is totally fine. But since I now, my life revolves around a more traditional schedule with my kids' school and a normal work schedule, I do Friday mornings is at 9 a.m. I sit down and I do my weekly review, and it's scheduled in my calendar. And it doesn't take a ton of time. It might take me 15, maybe 20 minutes. And at first, I actually built this habit by teaming up with one of my business partners, someone else that's building an online business, and we actually did it together. So that can be fun too if you want to pair up with a friend who is serious about building this habit. And what we would do is we would get on a Zoom call every Friday and we would go through these questions, and we would hold each other accountable and ask, how did it go, from the previous week? And we did this for maybe, I don't know, a month, maybe a month and a half. And this is how it should be with habits. Once you've solidified the habit, we were like, we are both so in love with this habit that we don't need to hold each other accountable anymore. We are going to hold ourselves accountable because we see the benefit of it. And that's really what you want to look for when you're building habits. When you're doing workouts, you should want to do your workout because of how it makes you feel, and it doesn't feel like a chore or a burden. And that is the goal, to start feeling this way with all the habits in your life that you have a choice over. I mean, there's some habits and things you have to do that we don't want to, but this is how you create sustainable habits. Okay, the entire purpose of the Friday review and reset is exactly that: to review how the week went and then reset anything that needs attention, and have a plan going into the next week that is customized based on what you looked at and what you decided you want to do moving forward. So what you are going to need to do this exercise is you really need to have some sort of calendar. I personally use Google Calendar, and I use a full focus planner. And this is actually included in the full focus planner at the end of every week to go through this exercise. I did not come up with this. I am not some genius, but this is something that's changed my life, and I want to share it with you. You could certainly purchase a full focus planner if you feel like that's a planner that works for you, or you could just write this in any note section or even any notebook just to keep track of it. But I want you to write it down. Do not think that you are going to remember this stuff. If there's anything I've learned, is the power of writing things down, whether it's in your notes app in your phone or, pen and paper. Do not rely on your memory to do anything that is actually important. So you've got your calendar, you've got your planner. Now it's time to ask these 3 questions. Question number one, what worked really well for me this week? This is so important because when you have things that are working for you, you want to carry those things with you. You want to keep doing them. You want to keep reusing them because they are helping you move towards your goals, and part of your goal should be to feel good. And one example would be if you've been experimenting with different days or times to get your workout in, and you look back on the previous week and you realize, hey, it seemed really, really easy for me to get my workout in when I scheduled it for 5:30 a.m. on Monday and Wednesday. But on Thursday, I tried to do it at 7 p.m. I had it in my calendar for 7 p.m. Dinner ended up being late. I ended up getting sidetracked, and it just didn't happen. Or maybe you notice that going to the grocery store at 7 a.m. on Saturday morning just made it really easy because it wasn't crowded. And you just thought, okay, I would just so much rather go at 7 a.m. on a Saturday than try to deal with the crowds at, Sunday at 10 a.m. And it's all about reflecting and just looking at all those little things that you do through the week and ask yourself how you felt about various aspects of your week, because this is really going to help you use your intuition and hone in on what is really going to work for you. So I do this exercise every single week, and I always have at least one big takeaway with something that I realize worked really well for me. And I want to emphasize that quite often these are little things that you're doing. Little, not even as big as a workout. These are often tiny habits that are the catalyst for some big breakthroughs. Some tiny habits that I've made note of that have made a huge difference for me are, number one, using a focus station when I'm doing work and I'm trying to be creative. There is a YouTube channel, I've shared it in my newsletter, called Focus Station, and they have these timed background noise videos that they're awesome, and it just helps me get work done and be more productive, and I absolutely love them. And I've shared it with people and they have told me, oh my gosh, this is so helpful for me. When I sit down to work, I put my earbuds in and I put the focus station on and off I go. Do you understand what a little tiny habit that is? When someone's talking about being productive, they're often thinking of the output. And instead, look at those little things that you're doing that help make the output easier. Additionally, things like using my notes app to capture any random thoughts that I have throughout the day, those thoughts that you have in the shower or when you go for a walk and when you're not even really maybe even trying to have, impactful thoughts, and sometimes those thoughts just come into your mind. I make sure to write them down now in my notes app so that I don't forget them. And that has had a huge ripple effect on my ability to create things such as a podcast episode. And, what am I going to talk about on the podcast? Or maybe what's a post I need to do on social media, or what's a solution for one of my clients' problems that they're having. It will just pop in my head when I'm not even trying. And in the past, I wouldn't take that next step. I'd think, oh, I'm going to remember. And now I've learned the hard way that I need to write it down right away so that I can go back to it and not have to waste extra energy trying to remember or worrying that I'm going to forget. So those are just two examples of very small things that I noticed during my weekly review and reset that I said, let me write that down again so I don't forget it and carry it with me into the next week. And then these become solid habits and have a positive ripple effect on my productivity and my stress levels. Okay. So question number one is, what really worked for me this week? And also, when you're looking for the positive, it really has a positive effect on your mindset and, looking forward to the next week, because if you enjoyed something, then you can look forward to enjoying it again. Okay, question number two. Now that we have made note of what really worked well for you and was a very positive thing for you, now we need to look back and get honest about what is not working. So you simply want to look back and ask yourself, what did not work for me this week? Again, lean into your feelings. Think about what made you feel frustrated, or did you drop the ball on something because you forgot about it? Or did you agree to do something that now you realize is just not going to work out? Maybe you agreed to a carpool plan that now you realize is not really favorable for the way that you want your evenings to go, and it's just not working out for you. Or maybe you realize that you need to shift your bedtime and wake up time. You've been really tired and cranky and you're trying to do things too late in the night, or you've been scrolling on your phone too late or binging on Netflix too late. And you just realize that this is not working for me and I really need to make a change. So often we can find ourselves frustrated and stressed out But for some reason, we don't do anything about it. We continue doing things that do not work for us. Maybe we get some sort of instant gratification in the moment, yet we know it's going to make us feel like crap later, like staying up until midnight, watching TikTok or something. And for some reason, we need to have the discipline to just be an adult and say, this is not working for me. Let me stop doing this. And I will say to you, if you're struggling with anything like that, whether it's your eating habits or your fitness habits, or again, you're finding yourself addicted to something that you're doing on your phone, like TikTok or Instagram or something like that, what I would suggest to you is, what if you just change that habit for a short period of time? It's interesting because I think sometimes people can think, this long-term concept of change can feel very intimidating. What if you just said, I'm going to shut down all my devices by 10 p.m. and go to sleep, and I'm just going to do that for like a week, and let me just see how it goes. And that's where you give yourself the opportunity to benefit from change without making it feel like this really big deal. Just challenge yourself to do it. Maybe challenge yourself to do it for 3 days. Challenge yourself to go for a walk and walk for 10 minutes in the halls at work, or, walking in your home every day after lunch just for 10 minutes, and just see how it goes. And what happens is you realize it's really not that big a deal. We often build up new habits as being this really difficult hill to climb. And once we start doing it, it's really not that big a deal. Yesterday, I was on a one-to-one session with my client, and she realized she needed to get honest about her coffee habit. She realized she's just constantly drinking coffee all day. She has no idea how much she's consuming. It's taking away from her getting enough water in, and it's kind of mindless. And she just decided she was going to change it. And she said, it really wasn't that big a deal. I just said to myself, I'm going to have 2 cups of coffee max per day, being intentional, paying attention. And it didn't end up being that big a deal. Whereas before, she was just mindlessly kind of consuming coffee all day throughout the day. And then you can look at all these ripple effects. It's probably affecting your sleep in a negative way. It's probably affecting your hydration level in a negative way. It's affecting your energy level in a negative way to just be mindlessly sipping on coffee all day. So she just said, I'm going to cut back to 2 cups and see how it goes. And then it was like, it really wasn't that big a deal. The world did not end. She didn't feel like she was missing out or losing out on anything. And it's a habit that she's going to continue to look at. I mean, maybe she'll get to a point where she goes down to 1 cup per day. There's nothing wrong with drinking coffee, but it was the way in which she was doing it that it was so mindless, and it wasn't in alignment with how she wants to live her life. And it was creating these negative ripple effects that now she can benefit from making the change that is going to now create positive ripple effects. And that's what we want. So that's a great example of how to really look at your habits and ask yourself, what's not working for me? And is there a way that I can look at it and just make a small change and benefit from stopping doing this thing that's kind of mindless and I'm just doing it because I've always done it? There's so much to be said about shining a light and becoming aware and actively participating in changing the things that are not working for you. So it can be something as small as good intentions of, have you ever gone out and bought all this fresh produce, and then few days later, 5 or 6 days later, you're throwing out rotten zucchini and wilted lettuce, and you're so mad at yourself because you're like, I had the best intentions to eat all this fresh food, and now I'm wasting it. And also, we ended up getting takeout instead of cooking. And you just feel bad about yourself and it creates stress. Or maybe you forget to pay a bill. So it can be little things like that that wreak havoc and chaos on our day. And it can also make us feel bad about ourselves. Like, we criticize ourselves and we're like, oh, I suck. I'm so bad at this. I should have done this. I should have done that. And paying attention to little things that you can change can help create a more positive narrative in your head, more positive self-talk. And then that just perpetuates more positivity in your life. It's so important to go through this step of seeing what is not working for you when you're trying to build sustainable habits for your fitness and nutrition. Instead of trying to force a square peg into a round hole, you've got to be honest what is really going to work for you and do your best to keep pivoting towards what is working. And a big part of that is letting go of the things that are not working. All right, final question. Question number 3. I want you to ask yourself, this is kind of a 3-parter. It's one question, but you're basically combining everything that we've done in the first 2 questions. So our question is, what does next week look like? Specifically, what are we going to keep because we have those things that are working for us? What are we going to let go of? Or what are we just going to tweak a little bit, change some little piece? And is there also anything new that we want to add in? So once we answer this question, we essentially have our plan for the week. So keep in mind that sometimes letting go can also mean outsourcing or delegating. It could be as simple as moving to online payments for some of your bills and things like that. You are then outsourcing that to a system, a computer system. You want to make sure that you are aware of what your next week looks like as far as any appointments or deadlines or big projects, so that when you're making your plan and you are adding in anything new, that it's actually going to be a plan that's going to be realistic and that you can execute on it. I mean, if you're, again, trying to figure out when you get your workouts in and you decide that, okay, this 5:30 a.m. workout works really well, and you start plugging it in, and then you realize you have a conflict on one morning, maybe you have to drive your partner to work, or you have a 7 a.m. dentist appointment or something, then you got to make sure that you are plugging in and moving things around. That's why I really love Google Calendar. I plug into my Google Calendar that, Mondays are a lower body workout day, Tuesdays are upper body, Thursday and Friday, same thing. I plug it in. And if I have an appointment or something that is conflicting, or maybe I don't feel well, or for whatever reason, if I'm not sticking to that ideal calendar, ideally every week, this is what I would like my workout plan to look like. But in Google Calendar, all I have to do is then make the adjustment. I move the little time block for my workout to Tuesday, then I move the Tuesday workout to Wednesday, then I move the Thursday workout to Friday. And it's just so easy to shuffle things around, and seeing it right in front of you just helps you create a realistic but flexible plan. So do you see how simple this can be? I know life can often feel fast-paced and overwhelming. I absolutely understand that. But taking 10 to 15 minutes once a week to ask yourself these questions is one step closer to a more intentional life. And you can probably decrease some stressors, especially if they're things that you have complete control over. So often we can just go through the motions, like mindlessly drinking our coffee every day without really thinking about the ripple effect that this is creating for us. And we can mindlessly be doing things that are just kind of getting us nowhere. Or we can be continuing to try and do things over and over that just are not the right fit for us. And we think it's because something's wrong with us. Do you keep trying to do intermittent fasting? over and over and over, and it just does not work for you. It's not because there's something wrong with you. It's because intermittent fasting is kind of stupid, and it's obviously stupid for you. It's not the right thing for you. So again, stop trying to force something that isn't going to be sustainable for you. This whole process is really about shining a light and being honest, because I've said this before a million times. If you are not honest about what you're doing right now, you are never going to be able to move towards what you really want. You have to get honest about what is really going on in your life. And sometimes that's really hard. You might have to get honest that there's a really lousy relationship in your life that is weighing you down. You might have to be honest that your job is just not something that is, great for you right now. And sometimes it's those big things that we have to figure a way through. And it can often be the little things that can help us start moving in that direction. These 3 simple questions each week can help you in all areas of your life. And it's all about evolving. When was the last time you really looked at how you're spending your time? Some people honestly only do this once a year. And then, they set some New Year's resolutions and some big goals. But I think it's much more effective to apply this process every single week and make these tiny little changes that over time really add up and literally change your life. So just think of how much faster you would be able to build a day-to-day life that really works for you if you look at it every week on a weekly basis. So just to review, the 3 questions are: what is working for me? What is not working for me? And then what do I want to keep? What do I want to change? And what do I want to let go of? And is there anything new I want to add in for next week? I'll make sure to have this in the show notes on my website for you, and you can get to the show notes through the link in the episode details so that you don't have to worry about taking notes or anything. I'll make sure they're laid out for you there, and you can literally right now take out your earbuds and start doing your Friday review and reset to make next week an even better week for you. Okay, that is it for today's episode, and I will see you back here next week. I hope you have a great weekend, and I also hope that you really do take action and do these 3 questions today so that you can set yourself up for a great week ahead. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of the Feel Your Best Formula podcast. If you haven't already, make sure to check the episode details for my new listener starter guide, and any additional resources mentioned in the episode can also be found in the show notes on my website. You can always find me on Instagram at Macros with Lil, and for more healthy lifestyle tips, recipes, and information on my one-to-one and group coaching services, make sure to check out my website. All the links can be found below. If you know someone else who is ready to start building their formula for feeling their best, please share the love and send them a link to the podcast. I hope you found today's episode helpful, and I'll see you back here next week for a brand new one.